Okay. Good morning and welcome to session 4, where we're going to explore together the current and future cyber threats to our maritime industry. And what we'll do over this hour is work with you to help you develop the right approach and we hope develop effective tools and strategy. Now, this is your session, so please do ask questions via the app and we'll feed them into the debate. And the platform's open for the next 6 weeks. So all of your questions will be answered if we don't cover them off in this session. I just want to briefly introduce my team because without them, we'd be going nowhere. Firstly, Vincent Lagney from Bureau Veritas. He's head of cybersecurity. He's also head of the cyber panel of the International Association of Classification Societies and sits on ENISA, the European Cybersecurity Panel. So well worth listening to. Also, we're joined by Walter Wilson from V-Ships. He's been with the company 20 years, leading the IT. And what he's done is he's got the kind of the crew and the shore staff, and most importantly, the management, fully embracing cyber. It's almost a unique selling point of the company. So you really want to listen to his insights that he's prepared to share with you. Delighted to welcome Captain Bradley Clare from the US Coast Guard. He is the chief of the Office of Port and Facility Compliance, working out of the Coast Guard headquarters, a distinguished 23-year career in port safety and security, and now really focused on supporting you with lots of free tools to share and help you manage your port cybersecurity. And finally, Philip Roche from Norton Rose Fulbright. Now, he's a marine disputes and legal risk management lawyer, always useful to have on side, but he actually, most importantly, he leads the practice. He assesses cyber risk to the industry on a daily basis, helping his clients with regulation, risk mitigation, and recovery strategies. So that's a quick insight into our panel. Now, what we've done as a panel, we've really thought through how we're going to spend the time with you. And what we've elected to do is to start off with Vincent to give you a real overview of how he sees the evolving cyber threat. So we're going to kick off with that, and then we'll work through the various questions and your questions, and we will enjoy the hour together. So Vincent, over to you to set the scene for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I will have some words to introduce this meeting. And to explain the current situation with cybersecurity and the maritime environment, we should check the current situation. The world is changing, and the COVID-19 crisis has locked down most human activities all around the world, except the shipping. The shipping industry was well prepared, and seafarers have contributed successfully to save the maritime traffic. But are the shipping industry stakeholders prepared to face the digital revolution that the COVID-19 is accelerating? No, true, we'll see. On the one hand, we have the Imo Resolution on cybersecurity being enforced on 1st of January of next year. So in some weeks now. This resolution extends the scope of the safety risk at sea to cyber system issues. And on the other hand, we have digitalized ships connected to onshore systems, connected to ports, and connected to clouds. We have ships which are becoming unmanned. We have autonomous vessels, autonomous systems, and intelligent systems which are introduced at sea. And we have we are connecting IT system to OT system, and of course, industrial systems are connected to IT systems, to onshore systems, and to clouds. We all know the risk coming from this kind of architecture, and we all know the risk from cyber attacks. We all know about viruses and ransomwares. It is not frightening when it does not happen to you, but do you realize that viruses infection may conduct to whole fleet blackout? It is not the same situation to have one virus on one vessel. We can have new threats, we have already new risks. What about having tens of vessels deprived of their navigation system at sea? What about having tens of vessels with compromised navigation system at sea? It's not the same, because if it's compromised, you sail with wrong charts and you are not in a situation to understand that you are under attack. What about having tens of vessels without any machinery in your harbors, for example? Is the digitalization only impacting the safety at sea? For sure, it is not. Shall we also consider the safety of the ports? Of course. And organized crime will for sure try to gain illegal money with those opportunities. And we can expect exactly the same from offensive nations through state cyber attacks. This kind of cyber attacks could target both fleets and ports. We have learned from the history and the recent COVID-19 situation that logistics and supply chain are the baseline of any war. Ports and vessels are part of the same ecosystem. They are digitalized and communicating. We cannot consolidate old generation building to face earthquake. We need to build them with solid foundation relying on technical rules. It is the same for ports and vessels. New systems shall be secure by design, but existing systems should be reinforced with cybersecurity while expanding their connectivity. The famous Marines improvise, adapt, and overcome is probably the best way to summarize the situation. And to do this, we need to train the community and share our knowledge. That's the reason why we are here today with you. And thank you, Mark, for this introduction.
Brilliant, Vincent. Thank you very much. That was a kind of heroic start to the session. Look, so the first question. Look, we've all got telescopes, but they've all got different lenses. We've got classification societies, ship managers, owners, lawyers, and government and regulator on this panel alone. So sort of the first question we really want to kick off with is, what do you see as the sort of key primary cybersecurity vulnerabilities for both shipping and ports? Is it kind of unsupported and obsolete systems, or is it out of date and missing sort of antivirus software and malware protection? Or is it just inadequately configurations and best practices? So Captain Claire, first of all, it's fantastic to have a Californian and B, someone from the port industry. So we'd really like your insights to that first question. What are you seeing as you travel the United States and further report, please?
For the biggest cyber threats?
Yeah. Primary cyber vulnerabilities, basically the vulnerabilities. These are, what are people getting wrong, Captain Claire?
Well, we've put out a couple of different advisories for covering malware and phishing. There's also been some stuff regarding your position, navigation, and timing. And in our advisories that are public and posted on the internet portal, we have some cyber hygiene recommendations. So it seems to be primarily, from what we've seen, more IT type attacks that have hit the port industry here. But our regulatory projects are really focusing on both IT and OT. So I could provide those advisories if that's something that people were interested in seeing.
Yeah, you guarantee they're interested in seeing. I think one of the things that people weren't aware of is the amount of information you're putting into the public domain to help people. So we'll definitely be sharing those links with everyone afterwards. Really, I suppose, Walter, your V-ships, close to 1,000 ships, I know tens of thousands of seafarers. Again, what are the sort of vulnerabilities that you're seeing in your organization? Not specifically V-ships, but on behalf of the industry, what are you seeing, Walter?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for that. I would temper the 1,000 ships. I don't think we're quite in that game yet, but we're heading there. and I will label this point all the way through this, and that's no doubt why you invited me on, was my main theme is always going to be the human element and human action and response. The main vulnerabilities that I'm focusing on and that I'm seeing within the industry is just a blind action or inaction to specific types of threats, which are, as Captain Bradley mentioned, a lot of it is around ransomware, for example. And a lot of this can be targeted simply towards social action, social engineering and reaction. The human element is key in this response, as well as the vulnerability. And I'd also like to touch on an important point of incident response, which I see as a major vulnerability as well. So yeah, targeting human vulnerabilities, that curiosity of maybe if I click this, I will get a free gift, for example, and just developing that. We've spoken about this before, pulling cyber into an operational safety arena will help reduce that vulnerability greatly, I think.
Great, thank you, Walter, and we'll develop that theme a little bit later on. I suppose, Vincent, if you've recovered from your introduction, it'd be very interesting to see what classifications societies see for your clients. What are you seeing as the key vulnerabilities? What should people be looking out for? How are these perpetrators getting in?
Key vulnerabilities are numerous, and I think that it is a main issue. We shall really consider that the situation is not safe. Of course, we have regulatory, we have a lot of things in order to improve the situation, but we have not one issue, we have many issues, and I strongly believe that the reason is that this industry has not been built to face to digitalization. And the history is changing very fast for the shipping industry, and the teams are not trained to cybersecurity. We do not have engineers to cyber secure the vessel design. Shipyards are mainly based on old skills. When I mean old skills, it means that they, of course, are already always relevant, and they will be. But they need to introduce new kind of people inside their company, and the shipyards shall not rely on, for example, electricians in order to build cybersecurity. And of course, we need electricians to build to build secured and safe vessels with automations. But we also need to introduce new skills. And these kind of profiles are not inside the shipyards, and the vessels are not secure by design. So we do not have system integrators. Sometimes the role of system integrators is managed by ship owners. They try to, of course, to reinforce the security, but we have only few of them who have the capabilities to support this new kind of design, and to understand also the complexity of a secure vessel. So I think that globally speaking, the vulnerability, of course, is technical, and I could speak about it during many hours. But the main point is that the industry itself is very vulnerable, because this industry is not built with has been built out of computer science. I mean that it's not only a question of cybersecurity. It's because cybersecurity is a topic, of course. I know this the cybersecurity, but cybersecurity is based on system administrators, network administrators, software developers, and it's kind of industry which is not linked to the shipping industry. And the shipping industry is changing. not because of the cybersecurity, of course, but because of the future, because we are building more and more autonomous vessels and unmanned vessels, of course, and autonomous systems, and new kind of connection between the engine and the port, the engine and the ship owner. And all those things are added to the current vessels. And the vessels, as I explained, are not ready to face those new challenges by themselves. They need to be supported by people who have this kind of knowledge, and we are far away from this moment.
Brilliant. And I think it's quite encouraging that the Classification Society telescope is looking way into the future with the new building regime. When I sat on a main board of a ship owning company, I can tell you one thing I had on speed dial was our lawyers. And I'm delighted to ask Phil the same question. You are probably getting phone calls from various owners, and in your opinion, where do you see the vulnerabilities, both for shipping and ports in your experience thus far, Phil? You're muted, by the way, sorry.
I'm very pleased to hear that you have your lawyers on speed dial. That's obviously a step in the right direction. We don't get a huge amount of calls. Norton Rose Fulbright does a huge amount of cyber response for banks, hotels, telephone companies, airlines, where the risk of a cyber attack leads to data breach and reporting to regulators and fines and that sort of thing. Of course, in the shipping industry, outside cruise and ferry, we don't have massive amounts of data, and those issues don't tend to have arisen. And so what we see with shipping companies is the usual IT attacks. Everybody gets their phishing and spoofing type attacks where money is sent off in the wrong direction, and people suffer a lot from that. We have seen some big attacks, obviously, Maersk, Toll, Norsk Hydro, where we have seen attacks which have had big impacts on shipping companies. But I can't say the phone has been ringing off the hook with that sort of thing. Where we get involved at the moment is looking at systems, because a ship owner or a party will come to us and say, we have this clause in our charter party, and we've not seen a cyber security clause in our charter party, and we're a little bit lost as how we deal with that. And so where we see the vulnerabilities, and when we talk to these clients and people around the bazaars, is that, and I'm very much with Walter on this, it is all about the people. So there are various layers. Management tends to be a little bit blind to this. Management still think that cybersecurity is a back office thing, something to be dealt with by the geeky tech guys who have the pens in their pocket and are in the back offices, and they don't necessarily tend to understand that it is something now which is front and center, a risk management issue, and they need to deal with it like they would deal with any other seaworthiness or risk management issue. So it is not all about just putting the latest box with the latest software in it to defeat these things. It is about taking the 3 steps after. So we have the 5-step plan, and Vincent can talk about the 5 steps in more detail. But essentially, identify the risk and putting some systems in to resist those risks is fine. If you talk to anybody in IT, they will say that if the hacker is really determined, he will probably get through. And therefore, what you need to concentrate on, and what we don't see at the moment, is the remaining 3 steps. So how do you detect it? How do you respond to it? How do you recover from it? And where we have seen weaknesses in draft parts of the SMS is in these last 3. So people don't do enough training of the people, so they can't detect it. They don't practice response drills, so they don't respond to it very well. And this makes recovery very difficult. And of course, the problem is this is just part of SMS risk management techniques. And anybody would tell you that there is no point putting all these procedures into place unless your people are trained, and then they can deal with the emergency as it occurs. And so, as I said, I'm with Walter on this. It's all about the human element. Cyber, they say, is 60 to 70% human factor, if you talk to P&I Club over the last 20 years, they will say that the human factor is always 80, 90% of all incidents. So it's not that different to any other risk at sea, and it is all about training and getting the right people in place.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Phil. Much appreciated. So change the emphasis now a little bit and moving on to sort of a key question that that we wanted to pose is where is the evidence? And actually, our first question is coming from Malcolm Waugh. He says Kieran Martin, the ex-head of the UK NCSC, has spoken recently about the actual risks in maritime industry as distinct from the perceived risks. And really his question is, how should we collate the real risks and act upon them rather than hearsay risks? The point I want to make, and obviously trying not to declare an interest that we run the Maritime Cyber Alliance, is the key question is, you guys, where are you seeing the kind of the attack vectors? How are they coming in, and what evidence are you actually seeing? Is it sort of compromised credentials, or is it malicious insiders, or is it because everyone's working at home, or phishing and ransomware, DDoS? Very interesting to hear from you, Captain Clare, if you take the lead on this. What evidence hard evidence you picking up through reports? How do you collate it so that we actually, in a way, the reason we need this is it's a messaging issue. We've got to really inform our managers, to inform the boards, to inform the shareholders that we require a budget to tackle the training issues within it. So, Captain Clare, in your opinion, where are you seeing the evidence for these incidents?
Well, I think the fact that your governance and your regulatory regimes are new leads to there's not as much data as you might like. So in the US, we in the Coast Guard 2016 updated our reporting requirements for breaches of security and suspicious activity to include cyber incidents. So we've had about 4 years of a mandate to report it, but we put out policy guidance at the beginning of this year that is going to mandate for facilities to incorporate cyber into their facility security plans, and that's a 2.5 year implementation timeline. So I think the fact that the US is starting to mandate cyber reporting and inclusion into the facility security plans shows that is a problem. And as far as vectors, when we see trends are putting out guidance and alerts, and some of those are done at the local level, some of them are done at the national level. So I would say that we have seen the ransomware that's an email that comes in, and the human element has been mentioned, and they end up impacting the entire system. We've seen some issues with credentials. So I think those are probably the two primary ways that we've seen it. But we're starting to see an increase in reporting, and I think as time goes on and the regulations are in place, and the facility inspectors go out, start writing deficiencies, we'll also start to see where are some of the gaps within the ports. So that's kind of a roundabout way to answer your question. Sorry.
That is, I'm almost going to let you off the hook. But Captain Bradley, once you've got this sort of evidence coming in from your inspectors and more experience, and as more ports sort of get up to operating temperature on the reporting, will you be sharing that information back out with industry or the IMO or any of the team that you see in front of us and our audience out in the world?
Sure. There's a major focus within the U.S. government across all the federal agencies to improve information sharing. So if there's a trend that's being seen, it's definitely going to be shared. It may be shared on for official use only, so it won't be necessarily published but it'll be shared with, you know, people who have some amount of clearance. And we have a Coast Guard Cyber Command, and they're putting out maritime alerts that are available for everybody when it's a more technical issue. When it's a little less technical and we're going to talk about cyber hygiene, we're putting out marine safety information bulletins. And one of the key ways that information is being shared within the U.S. at the local level is through the area maritime security committees. And in about 3/4 of those also have cyber subcommittees. So we have a means to rapidly share information with the port stakeholders. At the national level, we can take that and immediately send it down to the captain of the port, who can share it with the right people within the ports to address whatever the gap is.
Excellent, thank you for that. And really, Walter, the same sort of question, you know, to you. You've got tens of thousands of crews, hundreds of vessels. There's sort of no one better than you to really help guide us. Where's the evidence? Are you seeing this happen? How do you sort of rank it, and how do you sort of develop a strategy to deal with it? So, Walter, over to you on this question.
I'm going to open it up to a slightly wider threat vector, which I've seen the rest of the panel, I'm sure, will be well versed in a lot of the technical areas. But one area that I'm seeing a lot of evidence is around organizational attacks, mainly through what I believe to be organized crime. And quite often, or very often, it's the vector is our supply chain, which we may not pay as much attention to as we do our technical or organizational borders, or rather technical borders. We pay less attention, I think, to our organizational and supply chain relationship. And what I'm thinking along the lines here is, within the industry, we have a lot of, let's say, idiosyncratic processes regarding things like the way we relate to agents and the processes that we pass to agencies on behalf of a ship owner or ship management. Things like cash to master arrangements, that sort of thing. And no matter how secure your organization is, if you're passing off information, or you're not putting in enough detection capabilities around your supply chain, I see that as a big opening for organized crime. And there's another vector which I should bring in, is the naivety to believe that organized crime isn't aware of these maritime processes, these types of practices which have been long-standing within the industry. Organized crime is very aware of these, and will bring in specific technical support to help manipulate, again, through the social engineering processes. We often find that, for example, an agent will have a very, very old email system. They will have no real user access controls, because the person that was in charge of some branch of the business left 7 years ago, and somebody else has taken over. They use the same password, the same username. So what I would look at as well is the vector of supply chain, and make sure that relationship, you're aware of the risk involved, and you're mitigating that risk throughout those relationships with your business partners.
Walter, thank you for that. And honestly, that is hard-won experience. So really appreciate you being so open and honest about it. And so, Vincent, same sort of question to you at sort of classification level. Where are you seeing the sort of the threat vectors? Where are they getting in? What's your evidence of that so far?
We have many evidence. So I will try to give you a few of the different pillars on how we can sort the evidence. The first one is the regulatory. We have instruction from the Europe in order to reinforce the security of the ports. We have a resolution from the IMO in order to reinforce the cybersecurity and cyber safety of the vessel at sea. We have also, of course, work instruction from national flags in order to check the vessels. We have the Ajax recommendation and upcoming Ajax unified requirements on cybersecurity of the vessels, of the equipment. So I think that it's an evidence that something is needed, and it's not a question of it's not a hype. We need to do something, and it's urgent. Technical evidence. We could consider, for example, the level of security and maturity of the ports if we compare and ports and vessels. I will consider both of area with the same level of maturity. We should compare ports and vessels with other industries, and we have a very uncomfortable level of security. I mean that if we cannot face an attack from an organized criminal organization, we will not be able to face a state cyber attack for sure, because organized crime is easy to find, to be detected if you have a security operation center, of course, because they rely on phishing, they rely on basic techniques, and we can see the way they try to introduce the virus inside the system. It's not the same, of course, with a governmental attack. And so if we are not able to face this kind of attack, the ports are in heavy danger regarding the future, because they will not be able to face this kind of attack. And if the port is frozen, of course, we know that the supply chain and the logistic of the country will be frozen. And I think that the second pillar is that we can be sure that we are not ready. It's factual. It cannot be discussed because we do not have, one more time, security operations center and people who know about cybersecurity, who know about how to assess the risk. We do not have a chief information security officer, etc. So we need to adapt and develop this part. And regarding the third pillar and the technical part, we know, for example, that for the easiest case, compromised credential can be stolen today in order to be reused in the next months or in the next years. And the issue is not to think that will be secured if we had a firewall. The issue is to consider that we are already unsafe and that we have to adapt the situation in the next months, in the next year, by also considering the fact that the job has been done from the organized crime. And the weaknesses of the systems are based on the fact that we have very weak or poor encryption system, network segregation. We have very poor or misconfigured encryption system and networks. So at the end, we are not sure about the level of information, and we are not sure about the leaks which have already been done on all those systems, and the technical weakness is real. And the third part is it possible? And of course, we have few cases, and we share information at Bureau Veritas with CSO, and we have information regarding criminal activities. And we know about serious scenarios. Of course, as a classification society, we have clients which are informed, and they of course apply mitigation measures in order to close those risks. And I will not disclose any information regarding this, but we have very serious issues now. We have threats and scenario, and in order to have a conclusion, the vulnerabilities today are due to the fact that we have connected a lot of systems, a lot of machinery, navigation, and business activity to, let's say, a kind of general network, which is far beyond from the level of security that is requested for other industries like power management and any heavy industry that is already considering the cybersecurity since many years.
Vincent, that was a tour de force. Thank you very much for that. And actually, when you, I'll just refer everyone to a Verizon report that actually say between 2 to 3 million sophisticated malware attacks originate every year, and sort of transportation is the 5th most attacked industry. And when you think there's only kind of 1,000 to 2,000 owners and sort of 3,000 or 4,000 ports, we're a village. So we're going to get punished until we really learn to up our game, which you elegantly articulated there. And actually, Phil, so the same question to you. When you kind of, and not so much you and your company, but is there a sort of a kind of, I don't know what the right word is for a gathering of lawyers, but do you have a way of sharing between your fraternity of evidence of attacks? Because obviously we're working on it within our level, but and if there is this sort of kind of way of communicating, what are you picking up? How are these people getting in? What are the sort of threat vectors that you're picking up anecdotally through your industry? It'd just be interesting to hear the lawyer's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, lawyers aren't very good at swapping information because, of course, we have very strict confidentiality. But I know, for instance, P&I clubs have people who concentrate on this sort of thing, and they talk about that at the international group. And P&I clubs have a much better understanding of what's going on generally. But from our perspective, and I won't dwell too long on this, what Vincent is saying is quite correct, and we're very glad that people like Vincent are looking at these things. But on a day-to-day level, it is, those sort of things are just too big. They're literally too big for ship owners to deal with. Those are issues that have to be done at the state level, government level, regulator level. What we see is the other end of it, where it is a lack of training and investment and awareness, which is leading to minor things becoming more major things. So a lot of attacks that arrive are not attacks at all. They are simply inadvertent byproducts of something else that has gone wrong. A sailor plugs his mobile phone into the ECDIS to charge it up one night, and hey presto, ECDIS doesn't work anymore, and you have a loss of time claim because the ship was stuck. Well, the technicians came and sorted out and got the navigation equipment working. Maersk, everybody talks about Maersk. Maersk was not the target. This was geopolitical game between the Russians and Ukrainians, and Maersk were entirely collateral damage. And this is the sort of misdirected arrow that we're seeing. And those, I think, are much more common than, where organized crime takes over the port of Antwerp for a couple of years and smuggles its drugs through the ports. That is happening, and that is coming. And I would agree entirely, we are not ready for it. But day to day at the moment, and the sort of things that are causing problems are just lack of cyber hygiene, a failure to have different passwords, a virus gets in or some malware gets in and shuts down OT because it's come through the crew's IT system. And simple stuff like this is fixable. We, as a shipping industry, we can't fix the geopolitical stuff, the stuff that Vincent is looking at, but we can do the simple things. We can do them well. And having talked to Walter, that's entirely what these ships are trying to do. That's the first point of defense. And I think that is absolutely important. The other thing that's important, and you're absolutely right about this, is reporting. And ship owners are much like lawyers. They're quite secretive fellows, and they don't share enough information. But there are going to be quite quickly duties to start disclosing when you've been attacked, to whether it's charter party counterparts, or it's people like Captain Blair. We're going to have to start reporting, and so your initiative of having an anonymous reporting system is important. But eventually, we're going to have to get round to doing it openly, because everybody is under attack. This should not be a matter of shame that you're attacked. As I said right at the very start, it's how you detect it, how you respond to it, how you recover from it is where we need to put the effort in to keep the whole system working.
It's a great, thank you very much for that. And I think you're absolutely right. The effective recovery from a cyber incident, as some of the large companies have proved, actually gives customers confidence. There have been disasters where the CEO has come online, hasn't understood the subject, doesn't know what the plan is, doesn't know what the policy is, and dies, and the share price drops. So important. What's interesting, the BIMCO report recently said that I think it's about 30% of companies are holding business back from companies, because they don't believe they've taken cybersecurity seriously. So you're losing a contract and you don't even know you're losing it. And I would sort of pivot for the last sort of 18 minutes or so, sort of back into positives, really. And I think one of the things that I've been impressed with the panel as we've worked up this debate is that the key asset is our people, and how do we kind of develop them as our best and first line of defense. And I think really, I don't want to sort of steal Walter's sort of thunder here, but Walter, I'd just like you to articulate in how you've managed to get the board to champion the cause, to inspire the sort of shore staff, but also you've managed to get the sea staff looking forward, the crew, to cyber training. It's a great story. So the floor is yours, and just explain to us how you've achieved that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. And I'll temper that glorious introduction. But I couldn't agree more with Philip about the element of the human involvement within cyber. One of the key areas that I've mentioned at the top of this session was the move, the attempt to move, and I'm under no illusion about how difficult this is the move of culture to move cyber into a safety culture. And one of the key things that we do is that we don't actually talk about, or certainly I don't talk too much about information security. I don't talk too much about cyber security. The minute you start using those phrases, people start to refer to, as what's been mentioned, the sort of IT backroom boys who have visions of the matrix with binary backgrounds and firewalls and TCP distributed DOS attacks, and most of it is all about good cyber hygiene. And if we can simply, to give some of the examples, is most seafarers, I would say most, I'm not an actual seafarer myself, but I'm assuming the case is most seafarers won't smoke on a liquid gas carrier deck. There's a big sign there saying no smoking, and it's part of the culture that you don't smoke on there. Most people understand the need for example, a permit to access a confined space. In the exact same way, people should understand that you don't take a USB stick and shove it in your PC without giving it a second thought. That's moving cyber into operational safety. And the way that particular message goes all the way from the operational level, the technical operational level on the deck and the engine room, to the admin staff, the technical shore-based staff, the accounts, finance, technical team. And it's a common safety thread that we push through. And if you can demonstrate that culture or demonstrate the move towards that culture, and I'm going to steal the Maersk CISO's phrase here, is that you can demonstrate to your customers that their data is safe with you. And I think that's a key element. It's a key phrase which has always stuck with me, that is how you sell cyber throughout the organization and through the management, all the way up to the C-suite, is that you can demonstrate to your clients and your customers that their data is safe with you. And by that, we also mean data on board vessels. Data as an asset, so all the assets become protected and recognized for what they are worth by the operational team. And just developing that cyber culture develops operational safety.
Brilliant, Walter. And without sort of giving any sort of intellectual property away, what's the sort of the silver bullet? How have you managed to get this culture change? Because you've dramatically kind of improved the sort of cyber professionalism of the entire group, to moved it forward, and that's been not easy, but you've done it in so any sort of any tips? Get the right
I knew where you were going with that. One of the things, and I'm not going to mention any particular companies here, but one of the key factors is to find awareness content, provide awareness content on a regular basis. What we do is we provide a continuous awareness program so that it's continually rolling. It's not something that we simply do for new starts or we do once a year. What we do is we find areas of human vulnerabilities and we focus maybe 3-4 pieces of material which target that particular vulnerability, whether it's good password hygiene, whether it's phishing, whether it's physical access, shoulder surfing, holding doors open for people, clean desk policies. But the key element is that to make material, to build an appetite for the consumption of that material, to do that, it has to be quality. Yeah. What we do, what I think everybody knows, is that there is no benefit whatsoever. In fact, it's a complete opposite effect, I think, if you provide 3 PowerPoint slides and a couple of questions at the end, which are completely bland, out of date, of very little interest, and they don't change from year to year. That form of awareness training is almost negative, I would say, because people become resentful for it. It wastes their time, it wastes your time. There is a huge amount of really good material, even open source material. It does take a bit of time to gather that. There's quite a lot of time spent looking at YouTube, I think. Even building phishing campaigns. There's a lot of good open source platforms which will provide a very, very good platform for phishing exercises, for example. We regularly run phishing tests using some of the common and most often seen attacks. At this time of year, anybody receiving a DHL notice of consignment waiting for them in the post office, they're very, very tempted to click on that link. And people know this. The criminal gangs know this. That's how they build these campaigns to harvest credentials, to use them in further attacks. So those types of scenarios, and I need to stress the point about making it appealing to your audience. That's the key element, I think, to gain that appetite and gain the confidence and completion returns, so that people do actually want to complete the material and they look forward to the next set of material. And you get a comment that says, I didn't know that before, and now I'll be on my guard.
Brilliant.
So
Well,
I think that helps a lot.
Walter, thank you for sharing that with us. And actually, yeah, it's very valuable. And within the Maritime Cyber Alliance, we have free tools using this and several other providers to help the hard-pressed CSO not have to go to sort of 30 different YouTube sites, consolidating experience. So thank you for that. And as we sort of approach the last 10 minutes, I'm just going to sort of pivot. We've got a couple of questions coming in here from Captain Rushan Dayal. Well, could just question about the IMO Resolution 428. Obviously, 1st of January 2021, it's coming in. Philip, you've obviously done a little bit of research on this. And what do you kind of think the legal ramifications of this actually are? And any pitfalls that a ship manager, ship owner or should be aware of?
Well, thanks, Mark. I mean, you obviously have to comply with this. Now, how flag states are putting this into effect is somewhat variable, but essentially you have to have some element of cybersecurity written in after your DOC renewal after the 1st of January. So there certainly isn't a requirement from 1st of January. It is something which will come in through the year, depending on where your ship is in its cycle and safety management system. But what this is going to add to is evidence. And I remember when the ISM code, I'm sadly old enough to remember when the ISM code came in the first time. And I remember my client saying, well, this is just an exercise in claimants gathering evidence to beat us over the head and make claims. And you could actually extend that to this. So effectively, you now have written down what you're supposed to do to ensure cybersecurity. And clearly, if you don't do it, then you run the risk of claims for the ship being unseaworthy or privity failing to have been exercised, setting the ship to sea, which of course leads to all sorts of issues with marine insurance and carriage of goods by sea liabilities. So there's that aspect to it. Are we going to have a surge of matrix type PSC officers coming on board and pen testing our ships? Probably not. I would defer to Captain Clare on that. But they will want to see that there is a basic amount of cyber hygiene, that there are principles and procedures in place. And when the inspector says to a sailor, so what do you do in this situation? If the sailor looks blank, just as he would if you asked him how you fight a fire, he looked blank, then that's going to lead to deeper investigation. And Captain Clare might want to comment on the ship that got reported on having had a cyber attack off New York, and it didn't actually have any detrimental effect on its seaworthiness, but clearly it found itself in distress, and the U.S. Coast Guard had to go and have a look, and the U.S. Coast Guard, concluded that the degree of cyber security on board was pretty woeful, and so that is going to, after 1st of January, get you into slightly hotter water with port state control authorities, and that leading to detentions and that sort of thing. And then, of course, your counterparts. If you are chartering your ship to a big commercial company, they're going to say, well, okay, what are you doing about it? What does it say in your SMS? And how can you demonstrate to us that you are actually living by this? Your people are being trained and you're practicing recovery. And so all these issues are going to run and become more important over the next year, 18 months. And for shipping companies that don't put the effort in and prepare and train their people, there's going to be all these issues arising for them.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And Captain Clare, you don't need a telescope to see this question coming. Obviously, I respect that you're from the port side of the US Coast Guard, but have you got any comments about the way that you believe it might be policed, and also comment briefly on the New York ship? We've got about 5 minutes left, and I'd love everyone to have a comment on this, but very important to hear from you, Captain Clare.
So the Coast Guard did release a work instruction talking about the new IMO requirement. And again, the IMO comes out with requirements all the time, and they're incorporated into existing port state control exams. So the marine inspector, port state control officer who's going to come out to the ship is definitely not going to be doing penetration testing on the ship, but they are going to be asking questions to ensure that it has been incorporated into the safety management system. The Coast Guard also is working because the marine inspectors need to be trained as well. So we're working on putting together training so that our inspectors are aware that there's a new requirement. They should be inquiring about it just like any other requirement on the ship. And I think that we're making good progress with that. But kind of tied to the Maersk ship in New York is Coast Guard Cyber Command has a fully staffed cyber protection team, and these are our cyber IT experts. It's a resource both for industry and for the Captain Port. So when the ship came into New York, there were concerns. It wasn't just the Coast Guard. I would say it was more of a unified command where you're engaging the port authorities and state and locals. But the Coast Guard cyber protection team went out, and they actually provided some of the technical expertise working with Maersk to ensure that the Captain Port and other stakeholders were comfortable with what had been done, and that the vessel didn't pose a risk to the port. So I would say that that's the way that it's going to be within the Coast Guard is, when there is something that's found, during a normal port state control exam, it's very likely going to be, or reported, outside the expertise of the local unit, and then they're going to be able to reach into the Coast Guard to find a resource that can provide technical assistance for them. So I hope that answers the question.
It does indeed, Captain Bradley. And I think one of the things that everyone should take away from this event is how approachable, not you personally, but you on behalf of the Coast Guard, are to questions and follow up through your various websites. So we just sort of 2 minutes to go. Walter, sort of question to you, the sort of 60 seconds about what we've been talking about, the IMO regulation. What do you see? What are you saying to your masters?
I think it's just to again reinforce what Philip had mentioned is the importance, obviously, of building cyber within your SMS, but also to get the message across and make everybody who might be involved in any sort of assessment or examination that they are fully aware, obviously the rest of the crew, but those people with your HSEQ within the master, within deck officers, to ensure that they are aware of each of the aspects of cyber safety that's involved in the SMS, any questions that will be likely to be posed, even a crib sheet, a checklist, just to make sure that all your crew are aware of where within your SMS, obviously it needs to be within your SMS, but where they can point to for evidence and who they can refer back to for evidence of compliance. But I agree, there's not going to be a full vulnerability pen testing taking place, I would imagine. But to ensure that your SMS is compliant and shown to be compliant and can be evidenced as such.
Thank you for that, Walter. And yeah, Vincent, 20 seconds from probably the most classification. What are you seeing about this IMO regulation, my friend?
Yes, yes, I agree with my colleagues, and of course we have anticipated this step, and we have helped ship owners, supported ship owners to deliver documents by sharing templates, methodologies, and tools to identify the systems, also to assess the risk, and of course to build procedures, train the crew members through online training sessions. And so regarding the Imo resolution, I'm pretty sure that regarding our clients, of course, they have been really trained. That's all.
Brilliant. Well, gentlemen, audience, thank you so much for your time. It's been hugely appreciated. We could have talked for more hours, but I really appreciate you dialing in, and my panel, Walter, Phil, Vincent, Captain Bradley. Really appreciate the time, effort, and energy that you've helped educate the audience. It's much appreciated. And thank you all. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.